If you want an enterprise architect career, mastering frameworks is not enough. You must master the 7 skills that create business value. And in this video, we are going to discuss the 7 critical skill sets of the enterprise architect. And we will discuss why these skills are the key to getting hired and being effective in your role. I'm going to start with the most obvious one, which is technical knowledge. That's the first set of skills we'll talk about. And yes, enterprise architects need strong technical knowledge. But here's the issue. You do not need the same kind of knowledge in the same way as an engineer would need knowledge. See, the engineer needs to know, how do I build a system? How do I configure this system? How do we troubleshoot and even operate the technology, as that's their job. But we architects are there to understand how the technology works and how it fits together into a cohesive strategy. Now that's going to be an extremely different standard. We enterprise architects must understand networking and security and compute and storage and data, application architectures, cloud platforms, and even AI. But the goal is not to become a deep engineer in every domain. First, it's impossible because we cross people, processes, technologies in the entire business. But what's important for us is to understand how these domains fit together. How does networking and security and compute go together, for example? We need to understand in the architecture or the technology choices we use, what are the risks? What are the trade-offs between option 1 and option 2? And how will our technology choices affect the business's outcomes? And that's why you'll have a different perspective and communication style of an engineer and an enterprise architect. For example, an engineer might say, we use this database because it has great performance. Now, while an engineer would say that, we enterprise architects are going to ask a different question. What business capability is this database supporting? What regulatory requirements apply? How will the use of this database, for example, affect our costs or our resilience? See, it's a very different set of questions we're answering. Engineering knowledge is all about how do I build it, tune it, troubleshoot it, what have you. And architecture knowledge is about decision making. Now, AI is going to be critical, and in 2026 and beyond, all enterprise architects must understand AI. Now, not at the machine learning engineer level, because we are not engineers, but we have to be serious and understand that AI is changing applications. It's changing an organization's data strategy. There's security risks, the way they can govern their organization, even operate their organization. So if you don't understand AI at the architectural level, you're not going to be able to guide the enterprise. But again, I want to make it clear. AI architecture knowledge is not learning how to write Python. It is not learning with playing with R, for example. It is understanding how AI will fit into the business. Where should we use AI? Where should we not use AI? What kind of data is required to make the AI work? What risk does this AI architecture introduce? What governance is needed? So yes, we need technical knowledge, and it matters a lot. But for us as enterprise architects, technical knowledge is not the destination. It is the foundation for what we do. And if you stop at technical knowledge, you'll sound like an engineer, act like an engineer, think like an engineer, and you won't be hired as an enterprise architect. I love engineers, but it's a different job. Now, if technical knowledge is only the foundation, what are the skills that actually make you valuable to executives? That's what we're going to talk about next. Now, we're going to be brought to to business acumen, and that's the second set of skills you need to have as an enterprise architect. Now, remember, enterprise architecture is not a technology job that occasionally talks to the business. Enterprise architecture is a business strategy role that uses technology as a means to enhance and advance the client. So I want to say that again. Enterprise architecture is a business strategy role. The purpose of enterprise architecture is not to create diagrams. It's not to run meetings. It's not to enforce frameworks. The purpose of enterprise architecture is to help the client organization create competitive business advantage, whether that means increasing revenue, reducing costs, reducing risks, improving the customer experience, improving the operational efficiency of the organization, or any other business goal. So if you don't understand business, you just can't be a strong architect. You may be technical, you may be smart, you may have a lot of certifications, but you'll struggle in the room where decisions are actually made, because executives, they don't care about technology for the sake of technology. They don't care what's cool or in vogue. Executives care about business outcomes. They care about market growth or margin growth or cost control or risk management. And that's what the executives care about. And that's what you have to be able to communicate and help solve. So when you talk to executives as an enterprise architect, the conversation can't sound like this. We need a new platform because the current one is outdated. That's an engineering argument. Now, an enterprise architect would say something different. They would say our current platform is slowing product launches, increasing operational costs, and preventing the business from entering new markets quickly. We need a new kind of architecture that will reduce complexity, improve speed, and support the business strategy. Now, we may have been talking about the same technical issue, but here we framed it as a business problem, and that's what executives respond to. Now, under the areas of business, enterprise architects must understand business models and operating models for business and be able to understand a business capabilities and be able to map it out, understand value streams, understand risk, governance, and strategy. And you have to be able to understand why the company exists, how the company makes money, where the company's trying to go, and what is preventing them from getting there. Because that's your job, is to design that strategy. Your job is not to recommend the technology. The job is to align technology decisions with business goals. And that's business acumen. And without it, you'll never be seen as a strategic advisor. You'll never be able to do the role. But business knowledge alone is not enough. Because even if you have the right strategy, someone has to believe you. Someone has to trust you. Someone has to support you. And then someone else has to fund the architecture. And that brings us to skill number 3, executive presence and executive relevance. Enterprise architects spend a lot of time with senior leadership. And that means you must develop executive presence and executive relevance. Executive presence effectively means people will trust your judgment and listen to what you have to say. They'll take you seriously. Now, executive relevance is something different. It's about what you say actually mattering to executives. And I'll give you an example. Many technical professionals lose executive attention fairly quickly because they speak in technical details. They start with products and platforms and tools and technical features. But here's what the executives are thinking when someone's talking about that. They're thinking, why does this matter? What problem does this solve? How is this going to help my business? How is this going to help us compete? And if you can't answer those questions because you lack the executive skills, you're not executive relevant. And that's probably one of the most significant reasons people fail in an enterprise architect interview is they give a technically correct answer that sounds engineering and not business strategic. For example, if someone were to ask you, how would you modernize our application portfolio? Don't give an answer that starts with, I would perform a cloud migration, leverage containers, Kubernetes, microservices, and DevOps. That is not an architect level answer. A strong enterprise architect answer starts with the business context. I would first understand what business capabilities are most critical. Then I would evaluate the current portfolio, look at what's driving the greatest cost, the greatest complexity, and limiting our growth. Then I would segment the portfolio, define a target state, and prioritize investment and modernization initiatives based upon business value. And then I'll create a roadmap that'll balance speed, risk, and cost. That's an enterprise architect response because it starts with business value. It shows how you make decisions. It shows how you prioritize things for the business, and it shows executive thinking. Executive presence is not about sounding fancy. It's not about using big words. It's about sounding clear, calm, relevant, and trustworthy when the stakes are high. And as an enterprise architect, the stakes are always high because we are influencing investments, we're influencing operating models, the technology direction of an organization, and even how that organization will function. And that requires deep trust. And trust is not created by a certification. Trust is created by relevance, judgment, clarity, and executive communication. Now, here's the part many people don't realize. Having the perfect architecture doesn't matter if no one's willing to fund it. And that's what's going to bring us to skill set number 4, which is sales skills. Yes, enterprise architects need strong sales skills. Now, we're not talking about sales in the manipulative sense. We're not talking about being pushy. We're discussing the ability to persuade, influence, build the business case, and get funding for your actual architecture. You have to understand the architecture is not going to implement itself, and it's not going to be free. Architecture will require funding. And that means you're going to need to get executive sponsorship. You're going to need to align stakeholders. And this is going to be true because most new architectures will require teams and the organization to change how they do things and how they work. And that's not going to happen because you created a beautiful diagram. It happens when you can sell the architecture. And that means you must be able to explain why the current state is causing pain. You must be able to explain the business risk of keeping the current architecture and not moving forward with something better. You must be able to explain the value of that future state or target state architecture that you're designing. And you have to be able to explain why the investment is worth it. Let's say, for example, you want to build a new enterprise data platform. An engineering argument or an argument that won't get funded is we need a modern, better data platform with better tooling. No one's going to fund that. Now, the enterprise architecture argument has to be different. You have to be able to say something like our current data environment is fragmented, inconsistent, and slow. Business leaders can't trust the data, teams are duplicating work, compliance risk is increasing, and AI initiatives will fail without guaranteed and governed data. This architecture creates a trusted data foundation that will improve decision-making, reduce duplication of efforts, support compliance, and enable future AI at scale. See, we're having a different conversation. That's architecture sales. You're not selling software, you're selling business value. And this is critical because enterprise architects often do not have direct authority over everyone that's actually there, everyone we work with. We have to sell them to want to work with us or influence them to want to work with us. Because we may not manage an application team or a security team or a cloud team, but we need to work with them and influence them. Now that means you need good persuasive capabilities, strong credibility, and the ability to listen and hear what people are saying. And that requires sales skills. If you can't sell the architecture will sit in a document, and documents don't transform companies. But even if the architecture funded, now the real work begins. Because enterprise architecture is not a solo sport. And that's going to bring us to skill number 5, leadership skills. Any meaningful enterprise architecture initiative is going to require a team, a significant team. And we enterprise architects may lead a team that includes other enterprise architects, cloud architects, security architects, data architects, AI architects, solutions architects, engineers, product leaders, legal, financial, risk management, all of them. We may have to lead across all those areas. And that's a lot of people. And they're not always going to agree. They will not all have the same priorities. They will not all see the same risks. And they're not going to all want the same end state. And that's why your leadership skills are going to be so critical. Because an enterprise architect must lead without always having formal authority. We have to be able to create direction, clarity, and alignment for people that may not work for us. You will be helping teams make better decisions. You'll be resolving conflicts and balancing competing priorities. And leadership in enterprise architecture is not about telling someone what to do. It's about guiding the enterprise towards making better decisions. For example, the security team may want maximum control. The application team may want maximum speed, but the finance team may want to lower costs. These are all competing priorities. Our jobs as enterprise architects, in many cases, are to help the organization find the right balance. Not the perfect answer, because there often isn't a perfect answer. The right answer for the business and the business needs at this time. That is leadership. And here's another key point to think about. Enterprise architects often lead transformation initiatives, whether it's a cloud transformation, an AI transformation, or an organizational modernization change. And this is not a small technical project. These are big enterprise-wide changes, and enterprise-wide changes are going to create resistance. People resist change because it affects the current power balance, it affects budget, it affects control. And let's face it, most people are not comfortable with changing the way they do things. So your job as an enterprise architect must be to lead people through change. Not just design the target state, but lead people through the actual change and toward it. And that's why leadership skills are going to separate real enterprise architects from simply people who understand architecture vocabulary. But Leadership falls apart without one critical skill, because if people don't understand you, they will not follow you. And that brings us to skill number 6, which is communication skills. The enterprise architect's job is mostly communication. Enterprise architecture is not sitting alone creating diagrams. The job is asking questions. The job is listening. It's facilitating workshops or presenting to executives or explaining architectural trade-offs or aligning stakeholders or defending a recommendation. And much of our role involves translating technical complexity into business language. And we have to make sure that different groups of the organization understand each other. And that's communication. Many technical professionals communicate in deep technical detail, but we enterprise architects communicate in meaning, and there's a very big difference there. The technical person may want to explain every component in a system. By comparison, the enterprise architect explains what matters, why it matters, who it affects, and what decision is needed. And that's a big difference. For example, if there's a security risk, the architect can't just say, we have weak security controls. The architect needs to say something like, our current identity model increases the risk of unauthorized access, operational disruption, and data exposure. We need a stronger identity platform that supports least privilege, improves compliance, and reduces enterprise risk without slowing strategy. See, that's communicating more at the architect level. You're translating, you're connecting the dots, you're helping people make decisions. And communication will also matter in your interviews. And when you interview for an enterprise architect role, the employer is not just testing what you know. They are going to test how you think. Can you explain complexity clearly? Can you speak to executives? Can you handle ambiguity? And that's why certifications are not enough. A certification may validate you studied something, but it doesn't prove you can communicate it with the CIO or the CFO. It doesn't prove you can align stakeholders, present a business case, or lead an architectural review board. But communication skills do. And that's why they are one of the highest value skills in architecture. And once your communication skills are strong, there is one final skill that will determine whether your architecture succeeds or fails. Because architecture is not about systems. Architecture is about people. And that's going to bring us to skill number 7, stakeholder management. Stakeholder management is one of the most important skills every enterprise architect must master. Why? Because enterprise architecture affects almost everyone inside of a business leader. It affects business leaders, application teams, security teams, cloud teams, data teams, finance, legal risk, what have you. And the key is that every stakeholder has different needs, expectations, fears, goals, and constraints. And the enterprise architect must understand everyone's needs and manage them. Now, that doesn't mean making everyone happy. Let's face it, that's impossible. But it means making sure people are heard, risks are understood, expectations are managed, and decisions are aligned to business strategy. Stakeholder management starts with asking better questions like, what outcome are you trying to achieve? What does success look like to you? What's slowing you down in your current job right now? What risks are you worried about? These questions create trust, but they also reveal the real architecture problem, the problem we're trying to solve. And in many cases, the first problem people describe is not the real problem, it's a symptom of a problem. A team may say, for example, we need a new system. But after stakeholder conversations, the enterprise architect may actually discover that the real issue is a poor process, or fragmented data ownership, or unclear decision rights, not the actual system in the first place. And that is why stakeholder management is so powerful and critical. It helps the architect understand the enterprise as a system, not just the technology, the business system, the political system, the operating system of the enterprise, and the decision-making system. Because if you ignore stakeholders, your architecture will fail, even if the technical design is excellent. Because people can block your architecture. People can delay funding, resist adoption, or bypass your standard. Essentially, people can destroy an architecture very quietly. So the enterprise architect must manage relationships, expectations, influence, and align. That's not soft, that is strategic. Now let's bring these skills together. The 7 skills every enterprise architect must master in 2026 and beyond are technical knowledge, business acumen, executive presence and relevance, sales skills, leadership skills, communication skills, and stakeholder management. But I don't want you to see them as 7 random skills. All these skills work together. Technical knowledge helps you understand what's possible. Business acumen tells you what matters. Executive presence helps leaders trust you. Sales skills help you get your architecture funded. Leadership skills help you guide a team. Communication skills help you create clarity, and stakeholder management creates alignment. And that's enterprise architecture, not tools, not diagrams, not frameworks for the sake of frameworks. Enterprise architecture is the discipline of aligning business strategy, technology decisions, people, governance, and execution. So organizations can move faster, reduce risk, control costs, or create competitive advantage. That's why architects are paid for decisions, not deployments. And that's exactly why we built Go Cloud Careers. Because at Go Cloud Careers, we don't just teach basic tools or just basic certification training. We build real architecture careers. We teach all of the technical knowledge, business acumen, communication skills, leadership skills, stakeholder management skills, and everything you need to succeed as an architect. Now, if you'd like to learn how to become an enterprise architect or a cloud architect or a security architect or an AI architect, we hold 2 free weekly architecture meetings on Zoom. And in these free architecture webinars, we'll talk about what is an architect, the skills that you need to be an architect, what we actually do in that specific architect job, what managers look for when they hire architects, how to build your architect portfolio, and much more so you can get your first architect job. You can register for the free architecture webinar by clicking the link in the description of this video. The webinar is on Zoom. You can ask me any questions you want about building your architecture career, and I'll do anything I can to help you in these free architecture webinars. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell to be notified of new videos to build your enterprise architect career, your cloud architect career, your security architect career, or your AI architect career. This is Mike Gibbs signing off for now. I hope to see you in a free webinar or another video. Take care.